Augustine, the Farmer's Boy of Tagaste, by P. de Zeeuw. Chapter 1. Where have the pears gone? The whip in the teacher's hand swept through the air and came to a sudden stop on the back of Augustine, who was yet again pulling one of his stunts. The boy cried out in pain. It was not the first lashing of the morning either. He had received several already. Augustine was at a complete loss. Last night he had prayed. His mother, the pious Monica, had told him that prayer always helped. Augustine did not really believe it for 1 minute. He preferred to agree with his father, Patricius, who found it much easier to remain a heathen. But after he had been hit by the teacher every single day, he thought it wise to try his mother's suggestion about praying. What if he asked the Lord to stop him from being hit so often? It might just mean the end of all of his troubles. He had stuck to his plan, and last night in bed he had told the Lord all about his problem. This morning he had gone to school in good spirits. Now it would all be different. Prayer works. That was what his mother told him, and she should know. Did she not always attend the church in Tagaste? She even prayed at home. She was a God-fearing woman. His father Patricius laughed about her faith, but he never stopped her. As it turned out, his mother had not known at all. As the whip landed on his back a few more times, the boy decided never to pray again. After all, it had done him no good whatsoever. In fact, this morning he had been given even more lashes than usual. No, prayer was not for him. He was convinced of that. When Augustine looked around, he saw only grinning faces. Apparently, the other students were of the opinion that he deserved all he had been given. Well, they would find out. As soon as he could, Augustine would get even with them. His mother asked him, "How is it, Augustine, that you are always getting punished at school, while your elder brother, Navigius, is hardly ever in trouble?" "Navigius is a goody-goody. He always does exactly what the teacher says," the boy had answered. "That is what you should do, too." "I can't. I hate school. I would much rather be outside in the fields." "But, my dear, that won't work. You need your education. You have to learn something." "I know, but it takes much too long. It is always the same, again and again, and I already know it all." Mother Monica sighed deeply. It was all true. If Augustine read a psalm just once, he was able to repeat it by heart. He was a very fast learner. That was why he disliked school so much. When the boy came home that evening, he screamed, "I never want to go back to school. I think it is a prison for slaves, a hole." Up to a point, the boy was right. What was called a school was, in fact, no more than a rough shelter. Old tarpaulins protected the children from sun or rain, while they sat on rickety stools or discarded worn-out mats. The place really was boring, and if on top of that you were lashed every day, you would soon be fed up. That night, Augustine lay awake for a long time. He just had to do something. But what? Prayer was out. He knew all about that. Staying away from school seemed the best thing to do. But would it be possible? Certainly not if Father Patricius was home. His father was a kind of gentleman farmer who did very little more than watch his slaves, hunt, ride his horse, and generally make sure that he was indeed a gentleman. He was also one of Tagaste's city councilors. When Augustine finally fell asleep, it was with a vague plan to stay away from school if the opportunity presented itself. That is exactly what happened. When he arose the next morning, he heard from the house slaves that his father had left earlier and would be away hunting all that day. Certainly a step in the right direction. Then his sister told him that Mother had gone into the city to visit the poor. She often did that. Although Patricius was not really wealthy, his wife always managed to save something in order to help the poor. When she did that, she walked through the entire city. So now the coast was clear. No school. No lashes. His day was suddenly a lot brighter. The only question was, what would he do all day? He liked playing in the street, but that was a bit dangerous right now. Just imagine what would happen if Mother Monica saw him. No, better go into the fields. The house was surrounded by orchards, and with a few of his friends, he set out on his adventure. They had lots of fun, but their boisterous activities made them hungry, and they wanted something to eat badly. That something was not hard to find, because the trees were laden with fruit. Suddenly, the truants discovered a tree full of the most delicious-looking pears, the kind you never saw in Tagaste. That was not strange, because Father Patricius had cultivated them himself. He had already calculated that they would bring a pretty penny, because they were indeed beautiful, juicy pears. But now the boys had discovered them. Before long, 2 or 3 of them had reached the top of the tree. Augustine knew that it was his father's favorite tree, but he said nothing. In fact, he joined in. They picked pears until the tree was empty. Then they began to eat them, continuing until they could not look at another pear. Afterwards, they fed the leftovers to the pigs. That was it. They'd had a wonderful day. Plenty of pears, no lashes. It couldn't have been better. In the evening, when Patricius had come home from his hunting trip, he went for a walk in the orchard. The weather had been warm, but under the trees it was now lovely and cool. He decided to have another look at his pear tree. He would have the pears picked tomorrow. They should be ready now, and must not become overripe. He looked up into the tree. What was that? Not a single pear left in the whole tree. Where have the pears gone? He murmured. Had one of the slaves picked them already? It was quite possible that Monica had ordered them to be picked. Walking slowly, he left the orchard. He passed the shed and decided to look in on the pigs. He went toward the cages and slipped on a chewed pear. Then he saw more pears in the feeding troughs. Evidently, the pigs had not been able to eat all of them. He took one of them in his hand. But this was a pear of his special tree. Patricius felt his anger rising and became suspicious. What if Augustine played that trick on him? He could hardly believe it, but if he had, the boy would certainly know about it. As soon as he came inside, he asked Monica where Augustine was. He has just gone to bed. But, Patricius, what is wrong? She could see that he was terribly angry, and she feared that once again Augustine had been up to no good. Nothing. I only want to ask him what has happened to the pears. The pears? Which pears do you mean? They are gone, the whole tree, empty, and the pears are in the pig troughs. Oh, but that is terrible. Patricius heard no more. He had grabbed a stick and was storming upstairs. Augustine heard him coming and pretended to be asleep, but it was no use. Wake up, you, yelled his father, while at the same time painfully introducing him to the stick. What have you done with my beautiful pears? Ouch, Augustine cried. I have eaten them, father. Oh, yes, eaten them and given them to the pigs. Out of bed with you. His father continued to wield the stick, and in no time at all, Augustine was standing next to his bed looking at his father. Mother was standing behind him. Patricius, she cried, no more hitting, please. You could really hurt him. Patricius took no notice. He was far too angry to pay any attention to his wife's pleadings. Tonight you will not sleep in a bed, understand? Yes, father. But what is the boy going to do? Asked Mother Monica in a fearful voice. He can sleep with his friends. He and the pigs have eaten my pears. Come on, off to the shed with you. As soon as he knew what his father wanted, he was off. He raced down the stairs, out of the house, and into the shed. There he spent the night huddled under some straw in the farthest corner of the cages. His mother tried to have the punishment changed, but nothing worked. Patricius was determined to cure his son once and for all of eating his prize pears.